I don't normally like to do current topics or what's going on in the media. I just like to bring attention to what's been missed for the most part, but this is too good to leave alone. This is going to be about the open hand face palm strike for compliance heard around the world and weighed in on by many YouTube personalities. Now, the two biggest ones have been Lackluster and Brandon Tatum. Brandon Tatum is is a bootlicking moron currently, and is an ex SWAT team officer for Tucson City. And Dale Hiller is Lackluster, current Lackluster channel owner, and was a veteran and a medic in the war in Iraq. And so, anyways, for those of you not paying attention, I'm just going to do a quickie real quick.
That the officers used a proportionate amount of force for the situation, because he's a bootlicking moron.
If you don't know what you're talking about, don't make a video about Brandon Tatum.
And that's pretty much it right there. That was the open hand facepalm strike for compliance or whatever. And Officer Tatum over here on the right thinks that that was okay and there was nothing wrong with it and that it's all by law. And Dale Hiller over here proved that it wasn't and just added the exclamation mark of Brandon Tatum being a bootlicking moron. Now, the reason this is so profound is because Lackluster, I mean, historically in his videos is neither. I mean, you can't tell if he's pro-police, anti-police, pro-government. You can't tell him any of this stuff because he doesn't offer up any of his opinions or any, anything like that. It's just he tells the facts the way they are, and it's almost like a documentary voice just narrating what's actually the facts and what's not. And so for Dale to say something like that, it's kind of out of the ordinary. But as far as the track record, it's got to be somewhat true because, again, he doesn't offer up opinions for the most part, which is, I think, what got people so in a twist about it. And see, on the flip side of that, all Brandon Tatum does is offer up opinions, right? And they're just like in the moment opinions based on whatever bullshit that he has in his head. And the problem is that you can't tell what his actual opinion is because he gives so many conflicting ones, right? But the only thing that's constant throughout all of Brandon Tatum's last 5 years of being on the internet is that he loves the police and that he doesn't know anything about laws or whatever. So, I mean, I think it's provable in a court of law that he's a bootlicking moron. I mean, look at this picture, right? And I could go into giving way more, but there's like for a whole year, he's just Trump this, Trump that, right? And then just recently,
you want to talk about, what's going on in LA right now and officers beaten, which, by the way, I don't care whether it's a Black Lives Matter protest or January 6th. It's wrong. I think we both could agree on that. But when Donald Trump, the man who you support, calls them patriots and hostages and pardons them, you being a former police officer, you guys are only pro-police when it fits your narrative. That's why I bring up Donald Trump, because it's hypocrisy. And I was having a conversation with Jack Posobiec. You interrupted on the Piers Morgan show and just randomly said I have Trump derangement syndrome, which is an 8th grade insult. The reason why
What did you say to him then? What did you say to him?
I said you have Trump fellatio syndrome. You fellate Donald Trump, Brandon, every day. You don't criticize anything.
You want to put some facts out here real quick?
Well,
you talk about Donald Trump far more than I ever have. You can look at the last 5 videos you uploaded. They've been Trump and MAGA.
I'm not known
for being a Trump supporter. I've been Trump and MAGA.
I'm not known
for being a Trump supporter.
And see, you see that slick shit that he did there? Instead of saying, he said, you talk about Donald Trump way more than I do. We were talking about him being a Trump supporter. You don't even have to talk. You don't have to talk about somebody to support them. You know what I mean? For example, this dude wears all Donald Trump's supportive clothes or whatever, and supports all his views and whatever. But this dude he wasn't talking about how much you talk about somebody, right? But that's what he switched the conversation to immediately. He's like, you talk about him more than I do. Blah 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 blah. I'm not known as a Trump supporter. But anyway, it's just misdirection, and it's things that cops do that are just dumb. But I thought he was a Trump supporter, and that's how I know him to be as far as his political views. But anyways, that's not even the point. The point is he's a bootlicker. So anyway, that was the intro to what this here, which is basically, okay, maybe I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm going to support everything he does, which guess what is licking boots.
By TatumStore.com. TatumStore.com. We got a bunch of brand new merch, ladies and gentlemen. We got this pride shirt that I'm wearing right now because true pride is the American flag. And then we got some stuff to support the Border Patrol and ICE. Specifically, I stand with ICE shirts. This is our shirt here, but this is the one that y'all really want. The Ice Baby shirt, okay? We got the badge on the front that's like ice cold. And then on the back, you have Ice Baby with the handcuffs. So when you're walking around Home Depot, they know what it is.
That shit is not fucking funny, bro. Like, at all, man. It's not even clever. But the point is, it's how his opinions change, right? So before Trump gets elected, you know, he's all Trump, literally the number one Trump supporter in my mind. And then now that everybody's talking shit about Trump, he just kind of drops the whole Trump thing, but yet still supports the police, right? And that's something that's always constant. He's constantly bootlicking, you know what I mean? He's constantly supporting anything that the police do, right or wrong, regardless of anything. And he will make up the wildest excuses to excuse any kind of police behavior that's bad. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole thing here, is like he's trying to rebut Dale's observation of him being a bootlicking moron by being a bootlicking moron, which is just amazing or dumbfounding, I guess you could say, or just intriguing to watch. That's all. So anyways.
And Officer G. Curse.
We'll include some of that and review some of what Officer Brendan Tatum.
Been Trump and MAGA.
He's the
I'm not
president of the
known
United
for being
States.
a Trump supporter.
Really? Not known for being a Trump supporter. Look at you, bro.
Says on his Substack. Most of you know who he is and know that he can make some ridiculous claims, and in this case, it is no different. First, he claims that the full body cam has been released, and while most of the relevant footage has been posted, we have only been granted the opportunity to view the incident from a few angles that the sheriff's office decided to show.
The currently available information and play the relevant body-worn camera.
Second, Tatum puts in bold lettering that JSO was justified in the force used against McNeil.
Okay, now I want to start with this, because these are his words. These are Brandon Tatum's words, and they just exude ignorance, and this is a jumblefuck word salad of garbage, dude. None of this makes any sense on any planet.
He follows this statement by claiming that only the palm strike was being reviewed to determine whether it was.
Okay, so the first thing he says is, let's make one thing clear. So the rest of what follows should be clarifying something as opposed to distorting it even further, right? But, okay, so his first clarification is that JSO was justified in the force used against McNeil. But then immediately after says there's nothing criminal or unlawful about it, right? Those two sentences back to back like that in that order don't make any kind of clerical sense whatsoever. Let me clarify now. So in the morning, whenever you wake up, let's say you have like a baby, right? You wake up and you feed your baby. You're justified in doing that, right? Why? It's a justification, right? Why would you need to justify feeding your baby? It's what you're supposed to do, right? You don't need to, because there's no reason to justify having to feed a baby, because that's, you know what I mean? That's what you do. This is what cops do. They use words like that people don't really understand, that there's more meaning behind it. If you use the word justified, that means that you did something wrong in the first place and had to come up with some kind of reason for it being right, because it was initially wrong, right? So not even to assert it as opinion, but he's saying JSO was justified in the use of force against McNeil. So he's already saying that somewhere, a court or whatever, somebody justified what they did, meaning that it was initially wrong, but they had a justification for doing it. And he's not saying this is his opinion. He's saying this has already happened. JSO was justified, right? So that means that that is a proven fact that their actions were wrong. Right, but they're justified because they, had found some reason or whatever. Right, so he's literally saying what they did was wrong by saying they were justified, and then he follows that up by saying there's nothing criminally wrong with what they did. Okay, so he also said unlawful, right? So nothing criminal or unlawful about it. If I smacked you in the face in front of a cop, could he arrest me for a criminal charge? Yes. So there is something criminal about it, right? And is it unlawful for me to smack you in the face in front of a cop? Yes, that's true too. They're both criminal and unlawful actions, right? That the cops did, you know what I mean? That the cops carried out. They engaged in criminal and unlawful action, right? So to say that there's nothing criminal or unlawful about it, that's a complete lie, because they're both criminal and unlawful actions that happened, right? And he's saying they were justified for it. So not only is he saying that they are criminal and that they are unlawful, but the police officers had a good enough reason to justify it, and he's already saying that this has already happened. So those two statements back to back are just absolutely moronic. Well, especially when you take into account that his intended purpose is to clarify something for us, but yet the two sentences that follow that just dumbfound even more the situation he's talking about. But what really he's doing is subliminally putting it in the heads of everybody that justifying force, or when somebody justifies something that the police do, that makes it lawful or legal, which is not the case. It is an excuse that the courts have accepted to not go further with a criminal charge, or say that they did anything unlawful, right? That's what he's trying to do with that. And which is what I've held since day one, is that the justice system, American courts, are here to justify or excuse police bad behavior. That's why they started. That's how they exist now. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. But again, we need to be just as aware as they are of the words that they're using and things that they're trying to get across. Because, for example, we keep calling for police accountability. Accountability, the word accountability literally means just to make an excuse, right? It's a legal obligation to make an excuse. So standing up after the cops, kill an unarmed black man fleeing away for no reason, if they get up there and say, yeah, well, we investigated ourselves and we found nothing wrong with killing and fleeing an unarmed black man that did nothing wrong. Just saying that publicly and getting up there and saying that they, what I mean? That is taking accountability. That's accountability. Like, if you want to keep calling for accountability, then keep letting police chiefs get up there and shoot and talk about how they found nothing wrong with shooting an unarmed black kid running away for no reason, for nothing. Anyway, look, so for example, accountability is the willingness to accept responsibility for one's actions, decisions, or outcomes, and to be answerable to others for those results. It's a fundamental concept and blah, 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 including behavior, workplace dynamics, and governance, whatever. But it says, okay, a willingness to accept responsibility for one's actions. So them, JSO, getting up there and saying, oh yeah, we shot this black kid or whatever, and the decisions and outcomes to be answerable to and others for the results. Oh yeah, he died. We shot him, we killed him, but we did nothing wrong. You know what I mean? So boom, that fulfills all the checklist of what accountability is, right? Their willingness to accept responsibility. They call a press conference. They're wearing their JSO outfit, right? They say that they're the ones who shot him, and that if you have any problems, call the information officer or whatever. Now it says they need to be answerable for for what they've created, but it doesn't say they need to actually answer the phones or say anything else. You know what I mean? So getting up there and saying, "Yep, we shot him and we found no wrongdoing," is accountability. You can't consider it personal accountability, right? But they're an organization, right? The police organization, which is why they can get away with not saying who the officer's name and only his birth date, right? So they take it accept the responsibility as an organization, right? As a JSO organization. So that's accountability, right? Technically, but it's not. It's not personal, individual accountability and responsibility, and punishment is what it needs to be. But anyway, moving on. Okay, so he says, is the only thing being reviewed internally is whether the officer slap, or more accurately, palm strike to gain control, adhered to policy, right? But if their actions were justified in the force they used against him, why would they be internally looking over whether or not a slap to gain control adhered to a policy? That doesn't make any sense. Of course it adheres to the policy. It's legal, right? You have legal justification for it. How could it not go with policy? Anyhow, that's not even what's jumble fucky about this. When he says internally, he means the police department is doing a review on whether or not the officer slapping this kid adhered to the policy. But then immediately after that, he says the law gives officers discretion to use reasonable force during arrests, right? So if the law gives the officers the ability to use their discretion on this, then of course it's lawful. But how could it possibly be justified under the law, like he says, and then still be a violation of police policy? And if that's the case, then what's the point of having police policy? And secondly, why is this happening 6 months after the fact, right? None of these things clarify anything, right? But again, here's the part that I just think is just mind-blowing. Is that they have to rename a sucker punch to a palm strike or open hand slap. But what's funny is they put the intent, or what the intent of the action is, right after it, to gain control. And this is the part that to me is just fucking mind-blowing. To gain control of what, right? And even if that is the case, to gain control of what he's doing, so again, now they're saying he's out of. The more words you use, the more implications that these words have. Like out of. So if it's to gain control, then you, by saying that you're palm striking him to gain control, is telling us that you have let this situation get out of control, right? Which it's not. The kid's just sitting in his car, right? So you're saying this situation is out of control, and you have to utilize a bitch slap to get back in control, right? So let's see if that actually happened. This is right after they decide or use their discretion to break somebody's private property and drop a window with shattering glass, sending glass flying at this kid's face, right? Okay, but forget all that. This is the very moment the window was shattered. Now, they're saying that they had to slap him to get this moment under control, right? So let's see how out of control this kid is, right? He's sitting there staring at his camera, right? And this is what's out of control. So they have to slap him to change this situation to get it under control. So after they slap him, there should be a different situation where they're in control. We'll even go back just a frame or two. This is before they break the window, right? So things are out of control, so they have to use the exigency, right? Because it's so exigent that they break this window and get it under control. So what he's doing before is he's sitting there staring at the window, right? They break the window. He turns his head so the glass doesn't, cut his eyeballs, right? And then he's staring at the camera, right?
He
And then
thinks that
let's
the
see.
officers used a proportionate amount of force for the situation.
And now what is he doing? He is, again, staring at the camera, doing nothing, right? So before the situation, before they had to break the window, it was out of control. They broke the window, and this kid is staring at the camera. They bitch smack him in the face as hard as they can, and he is still sitting there staring at the camera, no movement in his hands, arms, or nothing, right? So to me, and it should be to everybody, the pain compliance open hand slap to gain control did absolutely nothing and was a complete failure. All they did was break his window, and he was did the exact same out of control or in control or whatever. The exact same situation is in place that was there before. He's just sitting there staring at the camera or the window. You know what I mean? So it's a complete failure. It did not gain control. It was a failure on the police's part to gain control of any situation because there was no control needed because he wasn't out of control. So it's just fucking stupid.
Looking moron.
This is how we're going to decide if it's necessary. Here, when you look at it like this, it'll be different. This is before they break the window, after they break the window, and then after they bitch slap him. It looks to me like it was unnecessary for that bitch slap to happen to get to arrest him because they're in the same place now before they bitch slapped him and broke his window that they were whenever after they bitch slapped him and broke his window. He's still in the same place. His head just turned like 90 degrees. You know what I'm saying? Think about this. It's retarded, dude. And on top of that, the necessary factor, like right here, it says reasonable and necessary force to gain control during an arrest is allowed, right? But this in itself is a trick, dude. This is a fucking dirty trick because is it reasonable to break a window down and risk getting a shard of glass in an innocent person, well, presumably innocent person's face or eyeballs? Is it reasonable to do that and then bitch smack them when you have a perfectly working operating door? So it's not reasonable to break a window to gain access to somebody when their door works properly. That's unreasonable. What they're trying to assert is that just because the kid was eventually arrested, that any force used that they deemed usable was necessary for that arrest to happen, which is absolute bullshit. That's like saying, okay, dude, my neighbors are all mad because the cicadas outside, the bugs are making noises, right? And so, to keep them quiet, I had to quiet them down, right? So what I did is I called in an airstrike and had the U.S. military blow up the whole block and kill everybody. But we got the bugs to be quiet. The cicadas shut up. So it was necessary to call in an airstrike and blow everybody up to get these bugs to shut up, which is our goal, to gain control and gain some quietness over these bugs, right? So, but it's not, you know what I mean? It's not necessary to call in an airstrike to get some cicadas to shut up, you know what I'm saying? So, but that's what they're trying to say. They're trying to say because the final outcome was this kid laying on the ground handcuffed, that all the force used was necessary to get him there, which is bullshit. Let's say that I'm wrong about this and something did click in this kid's head after he got sucker punched, bitch slapped, or whatever you want to call it. Let's say something did click in his head and he now wants to comply and he is ready to, comply or whatever. Well, this would have shown him doing that and would have allowed him to do that if the cops would have allowed him to do that because they said, get out of the car. And he said, okay.
fails to mention the several other punches inflicted to McNeil despite agreeing to exit the vehicle.
Step out now. All right.
And
Step out now. All right. Right? But then they beat the shit out of him, right? And so we'll never know, you know what I mean? If it was necessary to beat the shit out of him and fucking, you know, get 5 people to stomp on him and hold his head against the ground, we'll never know. But because he was arrested and it did end up that way, now they want you to believe that it was necessary for that to happen. But they might have done it with the palm strike in the beginning. We don't know that. You know what I'm saying? I could be wrong, but we'll never know. And the thing is what I don't understand is how can you put so much weight on his words? For example, when they said, "Let me see your ID," and he said no, and they're just, oh my God, he's not complying, right? But then when he's actually physically complying and getting out of the car, and they say, get out of the car, and he says, okay, then they just continue to beat him up like he wasn't getting out of the car and complying, you know what I mean? Because he was in the process of doing it as he was agreeing to comply, and then they beat the crap out of him, right? Like he was not complying. I don't understand how you can put so much weight on the refusal to give ID, but I mean, he could have said, no, I'm not going to give him ID, but still be going to grab his ID and getting it in the process. How can you put so much weight on him saying no to refuse the ID, but then when he says, yes, I will comply, then you can just write it off and not believe it, right? Because so up until this point right now, today, in my world, I've been making this video for, I don't know, 3 hours, just on and off watching TV and blah, 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 or YouTube TV. And anyway, and then I come across, and this is great, dude, because I was just about to finish this up, and I was going to show you this right here and talk a bunch of shit about the bunch of shit that he talked about. But then I seen this, and it's Dominic Izzo. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but I've changed my mind about him over the years, and he's changed his mind about us over the years. And I just want you to hear what he saw, or what, because he watched, he's diagnosing the same, not even minute and a half of video that I originally put up with the guy slapping and whatever, right? But he, again, this is why I think Dominic Izzo is so needed in this kind of conversation, is because what he picks out, and having been an actual cop, that Brandon Tatum is the kind of cop that he lies about, like, oh, I've seen the shit and, you know, seen bodies and blah, blah, blah. Dominic Izzo was in Chicago in like the hood, you know what I'm saying, for like 10, 15 years. Like this guy, and he was a piece of shit. He started out his life as a piece of shit, and I don't think he's ending it that way at all. But I think it is very relevant what he has to say about this situation and what he decided to pick out as the first thing to start it off with. Anyways, here we go. So Brandon just made a quick under his breath comment about McNeil, the guy who got bitch slapped, grifting, right? And he said, "Oh, he's gonna. We're only hearing about this in February, when really it happened 6 months later. And he's grifting. He's gonna make some money off it. He will, right?" So it's just a quick comment about his intent by putting this video up. And here is Izzo's response to it, which is fucking wonderful.
Have that out to lose the election. If you're going to have this same type of rhetoric and condemning somebody for when they choose, we don't know when McNeil went to an attorney or when he went to find an attorney. It could have taken him several months to find somebody who would have taken this case, because we get police interactions are in the millions. How do we know that he didn't release it way back when and it got like 5 views and nobody cared? We don't know what his intent is. You cannot. If you're going to say...
Right here is the here's the deal moment, right? And he doesn't say here's the deal. He says, we're going to start it like this or something, or if you want to start that or something. I don't know. It's the here's the deal phrase is about to happen. And then he fucking lays it down. And again, this is so great. He says, let's start this right here instead of here's the deal. Let's start this right here.
Let's start this right here, Brandon. If you are going to say that McNeil's intent was to go ahead and be a grifter and scam the system for money, then I'm going to say every one of those cops on scene, including the black ones, were looking to thump a black guy that was driving through their neighborhood, and McNeil just happened to be the one that drove through their neighborhood that day. So we'll take that. Since you know so well what's in the heart and mind of this man, then we can absolutely take the stance that we all know what the mind of the cops were. I'm glad we set that precedent.
And then he presses click and keeps going. You got to understand the funniness of this, because there's an hour and 57 minutes to this video, and this was in the first 2 minutes, right? So this is literally how it starts, and then there's still 2 more hours of discussion about this. Anyway, I suggest you guys go watch Dominic Izzo's channel.
So
now here's another, just to end, is some interview that Brandon Tatum did. I was gonna put on the end of it, or I was gonna use for the video, but I just didn't. Whatever. Listen to the garbage that's about to come out of his mouth. Absolute garbage.
Does
it desensitized me to knee-jerk emotional responses to violence. And because I know I've seen it and I've seen the worst of it. I've seen people literally decapitated. I've seen people get beat to death. I've seen people shot to death. And I physically see them take their last breath.
Right. You and 50 million other people who have YouTube have seen these same exact things, right? He's not saying he was present there for any of these. And when he said, I physically seen them take their last breath, that doesn't mean he was physically present. Physically seen somebody, it's not even a saying or a word or a phrase that means anything. Of course you physically see everything that you see because your eyes are physically attached to you. This guy's a moron, dude.
It's an experience that when you have it, it changes the way you look at the world and the way you look at conflict. And
he's trying to use elements of certain things that make people that form these great pictures in people's heads and their unknowingness of certain medical conditions. He's trying to say that because you've seen people with PTSD have seen bad things, or it's because they've seen bad things that they will act a certain way, or it changes their mindset or view because of having seen a body part or something like that. That is absolute bullshit, dude. Everything that he's saying is just a bunch of little bits of information that he's regurgitating from different sources to put together, and which people are eating up because they don't understand a lot of the things that he's saying and haven't seen the things that he's talking about, and neither has he, right? But he's doing it in such a way to where it's supposed to convince you of something that somebody in a situation like a cop who might have seen somebody, with a bloody fucking arm or something, right, is going to change their view and make you more cautious or more heightened or more scared or more fearful or something like that, when it's just untrue.
Know enough that you can't always go off of the first thing you see. You have to put things in context and try to put yourself in the position of everybody involved. Context and try to put yourself in the position of everybody involved.
Did you catch that? I don't know how many of y'all listen to somebody talk and kind of in your head just expect the next thing that they're going to say, right? And then most of the time you're right, you know what I mean? And they'll say what you're thinking, but sometimes it goes away, like right there. He said, you put yourself in the position of, and in my head, it was going to say, put yourself in their shoes, right? But he said, put yourself in a position of everybody involved, which doesn't even mean anything. But it's supposed to, when he said that, and now the people who are just like blindly paying attention or just, listening to it in the background think that he said, you put yourself in everybody's shoes. And now they have the idea that Brandon Tatum puts himself in other people's shoes, but he doesn't. And he didn't even say that. And it's mind blowing, dude.
And just imagine the fear. If you have never seen a person beheaded, like see a head over here and the body over here. If you've never seen people beat to death, or what it looks like to be shot with a 7.62 from an AK-47, and the way a person looks when they've been ripped to shreds.
First of all, we've all seen Faces of Death before YouTube, okay? All of us watch the same thing that he's talking about or whatever. He's not talking about these situations like he has seen them happen in front of him or heard the sound of the chainsaw when they're cutting the dude's head off or whatever the fuck, dude. He's just using random bits of imagery that he's seen on the internet or wherever, or at a police scene maybe afterwards, to correlate that to some way of having to affect the way that you think or that you fear or that you are going to act in a certain situation when there's conflict or whatever. But it's not true. It's absolutely just not true.
By this type of weapon, and you have to pick their body parts up and put them in a bag, and the emotional toll and the smell of gunpowder and flesh and all this. If you have never felt that and been there, then you don't know the fear and the perception that an IDF soldier has against a person that's willing to do.
You see how he just tried to bring all that together real quick with like, you don't know the fear that blah, 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 dude. That is such bullshit, dude. This guy is just a moron.
Do that to an innocent human being. How much more are they willing to do this in combat with me? So the height of frustration, fear, anxiety, all of that goes into the interactions that you see with soldiers fighting on the front lines. A lot of these people don't know how many IDF soldiers have been murdered in this conflict, even on October 7th. They don't know how much conflict it is when you're going into Gaza, uncharted territory. You don't know who's a terrorist, who's a civilian. You don't know if it's booby trap. Some of them are getting shot and killed. You don't know if they're shooting from buildings. You have no idea what's going on.
Exactly. Those are that is present every single day of in everybody's life on any place on the planet. You don't know if any of those things are happening. That's true for everybody. That is just a fact. You don't know if there's somebody in a building right now about to shoot you. Who gives a fuck? That doesn't play into you acting irrationally whenever you're scared because somebody's got a gun or something. You know what I mean? Or at a traffic stop. It doesn't correlate. It doesn't make sense.
But you don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. You are fighting on behalf of your country and the legacy of the existence of Israel. And you are going to uncharted territory, in some cases to die. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows the fear of what is it like when I die. You see what it's like when he died. Mm-hmm. You see what it's like with a gunshot wound to the head. What am I going to end up like him? What is it going to feel like when I take a shot to the neck or the chest and I'm bleeding out? And what does my last words look like?
That's being used in any capacity, and they can't wrap their heads around that there are people out there who have bad intentions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go on a ride along. I tell anybody to go on a ride along. Go on a ride along. And then if you were on a ride along, you would have been at that traffic stop and you can feel this emotion. Yeah. Like when your life is on the line, when you're watching it from the TV, you're like, oh man, they just rambling and they're scuffling a little bit. He slaps him in the face. He didn't. When you're physically there, your adrenaline is out of control because you think I can be killed at any moment right now. I can't see this guy's hands. He got the windows rolled up. Is this going to be my moment where I'm going to get killed and I'm never going home to my family? Why is this guy getting so worked up over a traffic stop? This is a warning. Hey, Jude, turn your lights on.
Right.
Is this guy going to produce a weapon? Is this a mass murderer? Is this guy running from the law? Did he just kill somebody? Like,
you don't know.
I felt it, bro, when I was a cop. You feel this adrenaline where you kind of get afraid and then you get, kind of worked up, and palm striking in the moment seemed reasonable to you when you're worked up and this guy's uncompliant and there's so much going on. When you go look at it, you go, yeah, he could have went without the palm strike.
I mean, it's the same, the
collect ourselves before we overlap.
Right.
But they should send us cops that get killed every day. So every day we get a list of all the police officers that have been killed in the circumstances that they've been killed in. And there's so many cops that have been killed on traffic stop in this very scenario where a guy's non-compliant for what seems to be a basic traffic stop. He shuts the door and then he has a gun. And now he's got a reason to be hyped up, and cops get killed. They walk up to the window and they get killed. If you watch the video, the body camera that I shared, and I'm going to do a breakdown of it today later, you'll see that the cop stands off to the back quarter panel of the car because he has to be in a tactical advantage because you don't know who this guy is. It's not reasonable to get mad over a headlight infraction. You know what I'm saying? So, but then what happened is he had drugs on him. He had a knife on the floorboard. He was driving on suspended license. He didn't have a seatbelt on, and he also didn't have his headlight on. He pled guilty to all of those. He pled guilty to not having a headlight and obviously resisting arrest, which he was charged for. He was found guilty. It was adjudicated. Everything was fine. 6 months later, he produced this video, obviously in order to make a little money, which he will.
There's an interesting connection here, I think, between the uproar over what's happening in Gaza and this. It's it's a lot of people who don't have any interaction with bad people and force are just outraged by it being used in any capacity, and they can't wrap their heads around that there are people out there who have bad intentions.
Yeah, you believe in their religion, and they finally have a place where they can call home and be safe, because of all the military advancements that they have in our support. But why can't they get the same love and support impartially as all these other people? So, but go back to your point about backlash and stuff. I mean, I don't buy into it, man, because I've learned over time is that you just got to tell the truth, and the people that want to hear the truth will respond appropriately, and people that are just brainwashed or emotional about it, they won't never listen to you. And maybe they'll come back later and send you a message privately and say, yeah, man, thank you for telling the truth. But I get the same thing with police interactions. Like, I was a cop. I know the law. I know use of force policy. I know the use of force continuum. I used to have to do this every day of my life when I was a cop. And so I know things that the general public don't know and understand. And so, but I still get backlash. People still are mad at me, even though I've been right about every police thing that I've covered.
Right. Yeah,
I
Michael?
just because you just mentioned it, I just saw, there's that viral video going around about the guy whose window was smashed. I mean, what could you just because you brought it up, could you explain to me how that was okay? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, okay and justified according to the law is
Okay.
two different things.
Michael's
right?
a bit of a
Somebody
libtard, so I'm just
Tell me, I want to know.
No, it's totally fine. I think everybody should question these things and they should hear viewpoints, right? Subjectively, a person may think that it's not okay to strike people no matter what. Subjectively. Objectively, you have to look at the law and the justification for use of force against people at any given time. The totality of circumstances, in my personal opinion, would lead an officer to have that leverage to say, if I believe that a face strike while I'm trying to pull a guy out of the car because he's non-compliant was justifiable for me to execute an arrest, an officer can utilize that force. Now, I don't know if you saw the body-worn camera. They produced the body-worn camera. Oh, that's crucial.
Okay.
They produced the body-worn camera yesterday. The sheriff came out and articulated very clearly what was going on. And so at the very beginning, they pull up. He was non-compliant. He literally told them, no, I'm not doing anything you told me to do. He shut the door, locked it, and said, send your supervisor. I'm not doing anything. The cop told him 7 times, you're under arrest for obstruction. Get out of the car. Get out of the car. You're under arrest for obstruction. Everything the officer did was according to the law. It wasn't even a violent interaction initially. The officer was saying, sir, you're under arrest, sir. And the officer actually told him exactly why he pulled him over. He said, you pulled you over for not having your headlights on in inclement weather, and you didn't have a seatbelt on. And the guy was just completely combative for the first several minutes before he turned his camera on. Then when he turned his camera on, it's already has escalated. They have police officers that have responded. They have 6 or 7 officers that have now responded because this guy's non-compliant. These situations become very violent quickly. If you've ever been a cop, cops know a guy could be doing all this because he's going to pull a gun out. He's going to pull off on the traffic stop. He's a wanted murderer. There's a lot of things that could be possibilities which will make officers heighten their suspicion when somebody's acting like this over a headlight infraction, which is a civil infraction. But then when you go to extracting them from the car, I think the cop could have went without the palm strike to the face. But according to the law, according to what the attorney general said, nothing that he did was illegal and out of the bounds of use of force policy. But then when they pulled him out of the car, punching him in the face, it's not pretty, but we can utilize that level of force to execute an arrest. And you saw when he punched him in the face, when he was out of the car, he complied. So those things to the public may seem a little bit extreme, which I understand. But when you're a police officer and you deal with use of force every day, you realize a cop got to do whatever a cop believes is necessary to get this guy under control, because you don't know him.
Yeah, they pay the ultimate price for hesitation or